Hi everyone. Yeah, we're just getting started here. Welcome. Good to see so many of you. We've still got a minute till we get started, so if you've got any burning questions, or it would be really good. Thanks to Ken and Jenny, and we've got a few folk have said what they're looking for from the webinar. Be really interested to hear and to learn from you what you're looking for. So please feel free to type in the chat box. You can type just to us, you can send a message just to us, or you can send it to everyone so everyone can see what you've got to say. There's a little drop down in the chat box that lets you know whether you're doing it to all panelists and attendees or just to ourselves at Skillfluence. And we're just about to get started. I'll just give it another 30 seconds. We've still got people arriving. All right. Well, I think we'll get started, and hopefully we will have people joining us as we go along. And do feel free to chat with us, and let us know what you're thinking as we go through the course of the webinar. And please, any questions as we go, then do ask away. This is the first time we've run something like this, and well, we want to make sure it's as useful as possible. So please let us know how we're doing. We've got a really straightforward, quick evaluation at the end of the webinar for you to let us know what you thought of it and to ask if you think it's something that we should run again and what that might look like. So today we're going to use the hour to focus on impact-focused training models that can drive researcher engagement with industry. And we've got 4 fantastic speakers who are going to share their experience with us. So welcome again to all of you joining us live. And hello and welcome also to everyone who's watching this on catch up. We had lots of interest from folk who couldn't attend today and are catching up at a later date. So hello to all of you as well. We're really delighted to have so much interest. So let's get started. I'll start off with just a few guidelines for the webinar, just so you know how things will run. We're going to be recording this, and a link will be made available after the webinar, so please do feel free to share that, especially if you find it useful. Type questions to us. You can make the questions public so anyone can see, or private so that it's just the Skillfluence team that can see. Oh, this is great. We're getting lots of things coming through now, so that's nice. And I'm afraid you're on mute. Okay, sorry about that. We can't hear you. We thought it might be, for our first run, that might be the best way of doing it. There's a lot of people online, and just to keep it straightforward and give us control, we'll stick with just ourselves speaking. And it's an absolute jam-packed 60 minutes. We've got lots to tell you about, and hopefully you'll find it really useful. So we're running this webinar because there's so much going on in the area of developing researchers' knowledge on industry. The updated Concordat has a lot of emphasis on industry engagement. Then there's the REF, and there's the KEF, there's the impact agenda. We can see that the research councils are really driving industry engagement through their funding, whether that's Business Booster, Impact Accelerator accounts, CDTs, DTPs. There's lots of big drivers at a strategic and policy level. But what about the individual researchers? It's really about equipping them with the skills and the know-how so they can collaborate with industry, provide consultancy for industry, prepare for careers in industry, start their own businesses, influence business, and just be more confident and savvy about their own value and the amazing value of their research. So what I'd like to know, and you can see the question up there on the screen, as someone that's responsible for or interested in the development of researchers, what's the biggest challenge for you or your organisations when it comes to organising and running industry-centric skills development programmes? I'm going to give you a few seconds, just half a minute to answer that question. I know it's a big question, but maybe what's the one big thing that that is the challenge for you? Yeah. I'm nodding away. Yes, I can see lots of, so getting people to come and actually attend and engage, to see the value. Yeah, thanks, Hayley. Getting researchers to think about a career that's not an academic one. That's with a big exclamation mark at the end. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, knowing who's doing what. Yeah, thanks, Fumi. That's an interesting one as well. So coordinating between technology areas, expectations, the students' skills and understanding. Yeah, so engaging with academics is another thing that's come through. Well, that's an interesting one. So something that's of interest to both students and industry. And I think, well, hopefully we'll have some that maybe answer that over the course of today. Yeah, finding the time. I bet a few people would put their hand up to finding the time to do this and do it well. Oh my goodness, we've got loads and loads here. So yeah, getting diversity of the attendees in a cohort, getting them to understand how it will benefit their careers. Getting buy-in from senior managers to see why staff need to spend a time away doing this. Yeah, and getting to see the benefits. So loads and loads, and that's me just pulled out a few because there's just lots and lots of different things coming through, and I can see some themes there. What might be useful after this webinar, if we'll pull together all the chat, and we'll anonymize it, because I'm not sure that most people seem to have done it to all panelists, so it's just coming into us. So what we'll do is we'll anonymize it, but just so that you can feel, because it's kind of reassuring, I think, sometimes when you see that other people are in similar situations to yourself. But please keep on going with those. But I'm going to carry on. Just to introduce myself, realize I haven't done that yet. I'm Alison Gray. I'm the director of Skillfluence. My background's in skills development, career development, and economic development. But I went on sabbatical to California a while back, and I had the chance to study training design out there at UC Berkeley. I studied entrepreneurial strategies at Stanford and collaborative leadership at the American Management Association. So when I came back, I just wanted to put that into practice, and that was when I started up Skillfluence. That's just a very quick overview there. And Skillfluence, we've been going for around 4 years now. We've trained more than 5,000 researchers, PhD students and academics. We've got a whole range of different trainers that are real subject matter experts that we pull in to deliver different types of training across more than 25 universities in the UK and Europe. And we're really focused on supporting and developing researchers to look out the way and give them the practical skills on how to communicate, collaborate, innovate, and work with industry or business or startups, or maybe start their own thing. So basically for us, it's all really about helping them make a difference. And I think that's the same for researcher developers and people and you that are on the webinar with us today. So just another quick poll, because we're just trying to get a kind of feel for who's in the room, just to get a sense of your knowledge and experience of running an industry-focused program or programs. What we'd love to know is, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is you've never done it before, you really don't know where to start, it's all new to you, to 5, loads of experience, I'm confident, I know what I'm doing, and I'm good to go, I'm all set on this. Great. We've got, I think, most 20, 30, 40. Yeah, we've got most of you have voted now. That's useful. Okay, so we've got quite an interesting range here. So you'll be pleased to, for those of you who have not done this before, there's quite a few of you that you've no experience, and then we've got about 30% put themselves at a 2, 25% at a 3. We've got 21%. I said there are 4, and we've got 1 expert in the room, so that's great. Someone that's got loads of experience and has run many things before. So that's fab. Thank you very much for that. Again, we'll share our yeah. Oh, Zach's telling us he's closing the poll. Great. Okay, thank you very much for your answers to that. That's really interesting. It helps us just pitch where we're at with this. So we started out by saying that we're going to look at 6 training models. And I hope you don't mind, but we've reduced it to 4 models because we want to be able to do them justice without completely rushing through. And this allows us to focus a bit more time and gives you a chance to ask our speakers questions. So we're taking out the forum and embedded. Maybe that'll be something for another day. We're going to focus in on challenge-based, cooperative, blended, and capacity building. And these should give you a really good starting point to develop your own portfolio of industry engagement programs that match the unique needs of your researchers to help them advance their research, stimulate collaborative projects, engage with industry confidently, whilst being straightforward to run. So what you really want is waiting lists for programs, high engagement, great feedback that makes a difference and really changes people's behaviours. So let's now turn to the very first model. We're going to look at challenge-based. This is a model we use where we're collaborating with local or national businesses to meet with the researchers to give them a genuine business challenge or opportunity that they're currently facing. The researchers then work in groups defining the issue, generating possible solutions, and learning a range of useful business tools to apply to the task. They then feedback their recommendations back to the business and get immediate feedback. So we designed a challenge programme for 9DTP, that's the Northern Ireland and North East Doctoral Training Partnership, which is a collaboration between 7 universities led by Durham University, funded by the Economic and Social Research Council to develop the next generation of social scientists. The 9DTP programme is called Business Booster. It's a really good example of a challenge-based model, and it was the most recent programme was run in August 2019 by 2 facilitators plus guest speakers over 4 days in a residential setting away from the university. Now I'm going to introduce Charlotte Kerr. She's the Business Boost Officer at Durham University, and she coordinated the whole event right from the beginning. She had a vision for what she wanted to achieve. She was able to use her skills and her creativity to pull together various elements to design the programme, and she got some fantastic learning and impact from the programme. So we thought it would be really great if she could share what her experience was of that, and she was also a lot of fun to work with. So let me just bring in Charlotte here, hopefully. And there she is.
Hi.
Great, thank you. I've got some questions for Charlotte, but please, if you've got any questions, do type them in the box, and if we don't get a chance to ask them, then we'll do our best to follow up afterwards. So thank you very much for joining us, Charlotte. Great to have you here. There's lots of things that you did as part of the Business Boost programme that I think the audience listening to would be interested to hear. I think a good place to start would be to understand a bit more about where the idea to run this type of programme came from and how you got started.
Right, so the Business Boost is part of, well, it was what we thought was going to be one-off funding from ESRC last year to connect social science researchers with businesses, to develop DTP students, to develop their skills and experience in working with business, to develop them and help prepare them for a career outside of academia. I was very new into the role and into this realm of work. I'd worked at Durham Uni for 10 years before, but never in this kind of setting. And I was seeing that my contemporaries at other institutions were holding residential workshops for their DTPs. And it seemed to me like it was kind of the perfect package. It would bring everyone together. It would cover a lot of bases. But I just had no idea where to start with that. Actually, organising an event is fine for me. I know how to do that, and that's what my background's in. But developing a training programme for PhD students was totally beyond me. and I just had no idea where to start. I thought it would be a huge effort. And through contacting, it was the Scottish Graduate School of Social Sciences, I had a catch up with them, and this was about 3 months after I was given up on the idea of me being able to deliver a residential. And Anna there mentioned that their residential had been delivered by yourselves, Skillfluence, and that you did pretty much all the hard work, and it was so easy. I was like, right, brilliant. I'm going to get in touch with them and see what we can do.
Okay, and I mean, it sounds like the program is really about having PhD students work on actual business challenges, and obviously,
yeah,
the businesses were a really big part of that. So, could you explain how you went about doing that and what you learned from that kind of process?
Yeah, so in terms of contacting the businesses, so I think when I originally spoke to you, the quote came in and you guys could speak to the businesses and do all that work for me. And then we had a bit of a panic over how much budget we had left, and I needed to scrape back any money that I could. But actually it worked out really well for me, because since when I started in this role and I was a bit like, what on earth am I doing? I was going out to networking events, I was speaking to businesses, but I felt that my offer was very weak. Pretty much the only thing that I felt I could sell, if you like, was a placement scheme for DTP students, which we've reviewed things since then, but at the time the information about the placement scheme was quite vague, and it wasn't enough for businesses to engage with. So I didn't feel like I had a good offer. Now, from starting my role until I spoke with you, I did connect with a lot of businesses, made some great connections, but just didn't feel like I had any way of kind of taking the relationship forward. So once we'd agreed that we were going to hold the residential workshop and that we were looking for 4 to 5 real life business challenges, I just sent an email out to a couple of people at businesses that I thought the businesses aligned with industrial strategy priorities, which is part of the Business Boost funding, but also people who I could remember being quite interested in what social sciences could do for them, but I could tell they just needed something a bit more specific. So I sent them an email and said, look, I'm looking to do this residential workshop. We're looking for business challenges. I think this would be in your area. Would you like to take part? And once I had those businesses on board, I passed them on to Joanne at Skillfluence so that she could speak with the businesses in more detail, kind of flesh out what their challenge would be and develop that further. So for me, it was great that finally I had something that I could speak to businesses about and say, this is what we could offer you, and it's minimal effort on their part. And it has worked really well because I've been able to continue conversations with those businesses. One of them is working with students in our chemistry department now, so not in social sciences, but at least there's a link there. And it's also helped me when I'm speaking to new businesses as well, because trying to explain what can social sciences do for me when the reality is social sciences can do so much, it's hard to pick out the most relevant example. That now I can say, well, actually, in August we held this workshop, we have 4 business challenges, this is what the students were working on, and a rough overview of the challenges. So it's been really good for that.
That's brilliant. We've got a question come in just to ask us. I think this is quite a nice quick question. Were the attendees all at the same stage of research in your DTP, or was the offer open to all DTP researchers?
We didn't restrict it just to DTP students. We gave DTP students first refusal, and then we opened that up to PGRs across all of the institutions. I think that the only kind of limitation we put on that is that they should have completed the first year of PhD study, just so that they were kind of at least a year into the research. In terms of where the attendees were, I know that one had already submitted, so he was almost finished, and I think some people had just gone into the second year, so I think it was a bit of a range.
Yeah, okay, that's useful. And so let's talk about impact, because that was something that I know you, I mean, you were really on it. And so I'm interested, could you share, because, and this will be a big thing for people, so could you share some of the things that you did to measure and demonstrate impact?
Yeah, well, that was kind of a new one on me, is how can I measure the impact of this? And I mean, this was kind of beforehand, is how I could help the attendees to bond and get to know each other, because a lot of them were well, there was a group who were flying over from Belfast, and I kind of thought, I don't want them to be sat next to each other on the plane, maybe annoying each other and not realizing that they're going to be working together for 4 days. So I set up, quite experimental, I set up a Slack channel and asked all of the attendees to join that and just introduce themselves and their research and get to know each other. And I'd hoped that I would be able to use that Slack channel after the workshop and just kind of check in with people, see how they're doing and what they've managed to implement from the learnings. Slack didn't quite work out as I would have liked, and at the workshop there was a lot of demand for a LinkedIn group. So and one of the things which I did just six weeks ago when I was writing my report to ESRC, so this is almost 3 months after the workshop, is I could just post a message in that group and ask whether people could give me any specific examples of how they think that the learnings of the workshop have helped them in their research or in their careers, which I've managed to get a couple of messages back from that. During the workshop, so I did connect with a lot of the attendees on LinkedIn, and also I think we were promoting a hashtag for Twitter. So I was monitoring LinkedIn and Twitter over the course of those few days and took screenshots of any kind of comments or posts about the workshop, which were thankfully all brilliant. So I thought, right, I'm going to keep all of those as evidence and as a reminder. Something that was, I'm not quite sure whether it would be impact, but was a bit different, at least from my experience, is that I had a live scribe there on the last day, and you self-led a session for the attendees on, I think it was what they felt that they learnt from the workshop, what did they think their challenges were, what are they going to implement going forward, and possibly another area. And the live scribe captured all of that into what I think was a really beautiful image. I was quite happy to show it off with everyone once I got back to the office. And I felt that that was a very visual representation of what had been covered over the 4 days. And I also think it looks pretty enough that you could stick it up on your wall or on your notice board. And it's a constant reminder of what the attendees said that they'd learnt from that.
Yeah.
And I think being more visual and it's easy to just have on display, it was better than having, you know, when I go to workshops and training sessions, I take loads of notes and then I hardly ever look at them again, so I forget what I've learned. So I think that output from the live scribe was good. And similarly, she also captured all of the 4 business pictures from each of the 4 groups, which when we spoke in advance, I didn't see how that would be possible. But it was brilliant. And again, that was something that the students in those groups could take away from that and to remind them what they'd worked on. Yeah. But I think most importantly, the businesses could take that away. And I think that when you've got a 5-minute pitch, there's so much stuff to go on, you can't possibly capture it all or remember it all. And then those businesses, the representatives, they go back to work maybe the next day and they've forgotten key parts or anything like that. They've now got that visual reminder. And just last week or the week before, I spoke to one of the businesses who told me they still have that on their notice board and they still look at it you know, quite regularly. So
Yeah.
I think
Good having the visual reminder of it. I'm just
yeah.
conscious of time, so what I'd like is just if you've got 3 key takeaways or pieces of advice that you would give to anyone looking to run something similar, what would that be? What would be your 3 key takeaways?
I think what added to the success of this workshop is that the students who came, they hardly knew each other when they arrived. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 people who vaguely knew someone else, but they bonded so well, which was amazing to see. And I think that it was the interdisciplinary nature and the diversity of those students, because they came from so many different disciplines, different institutions, but they all had these common concerns and difficulties in being a researcher in the social sciences. Some of the logistics worked out well, unexpectedly better than I thought. So I arranged transportation for everyone, which was very difficult, because it went from picking up people at Newcastle Airport when a flight arrived, to the same bus then stopping in Newcastle City Centre, to then stopping in Durham City Centre, to get everyone to the venue on time. So, and everyone did arrive at the same time. Everyone went back on the same bus, and that meant that there were no late arrivals, there were no early departures, you know, people sneaking off early. And what helped with that is that the venue was quite closed off. People, and that wasn't intentional, it just happened, but I think it very much kept people together as a group and helped them bond. So I think that was great. And the timing of that as well, so I'd scheduled it on purpose so that it was finished by Thursday afternoon, knowing that some people wouldn't get home until Thursday night. I hate workshops and training courses that finish on a Friday and I'm not expected to get home till Friday at 8 or 9 o'clock when I'm already exhausted. And I think one of the other things I would add, just how I would like to build on the workshop we did, was to have more engagement with the businesses, whether that's getting them in on the first day for a kind of meet and greet and dinner.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you ever so much, Charlotte. That's been really interesting. We've had a few questions come through, so what we'll do is I'll ask you them at a later stage, and maybe we can write up some notes from that for the participants. There's loads of interest there in what you're talking about. So fantastic.
Oh, great.
Thank you ever so much, and good experience for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm already working on getting the funding to do it again next year.
Smashing. All right. Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, thanks very much to Charlotte for that. So challenge-based programs, they give researchers the opportunity to work together to learn and apply tools to create and present real solutions for specific businesses. So it's really good for engaging industry and academics in mutually beneficial areas of interest. So thanks again to Charlotte for that. Let's look now at cooperative. So the cooperative model is a programme where people from both industry and universities attend as delegates on the course. The researchers and business people are formed into groups to ensure a mix of skills and knowledge. They're then tasked with working on a specific industry challenge and trained together in an evidence-based innovation approach, learning how to generate ideas, how to make them real, how to prototype, how to quantify the difference it can make, and then they present that innovation back to a panel of industry managers and they get immediate feedback again. So we designed a cooperative industry-focused programme for SAKE, which is the Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre based at the University of Stirling. It's funded by the Scottish Funding Council with the aim of driving growth in areas of key economic and social importance. And they connect industry with academia to encourage collaboration on priority issues and to share insights and knowledge with a focus on innovation. So the SAKE programme is called Innovation and Industry Engagement. It's an example of a cooperative model. The most recent programme just finished last week actually. It ran for 16 people over 6 weeks with a 2-day workshop every 2 weeks. In between the workshops, delegates take their idea back to their workplace or their lab to work on, and they would also have an online coaching call with the facilitator to maintain momentum. So now I'd like to introduce Heather Jones. Now Heather is the CEO of Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre. She was instrumental in coming up with the concept and vision for the training programme and development of the project. And she commissioned us to come up with a methodology for this. Now, unfortunately, she can't make it to the webinar, but she kindly recorded a short video in response to our questions and said she'd be very happy to answer any questions that come up. So again, please do continue to write questions in the box, and I may also be able to answer some of your questions about the programme.
So my name's Heather Jones, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Scottish Aquaculture Innovation Centre. And we exist to stimulate investment and new ideas in aquaculture, and we bring together academic expertise and industry need. So we decided to implement a talent pipeline programme because we saw the opportunity to create a cohort of leaders of the future. We identified a couple of issues that industry brought to our attention, that academics that were coming out of the system were very clever, but not always very savvy. And that might sound like a harsh criticism, but industry is quite brutal in what they say. And so the challenge that they brought to the Innovation Centre was develop the human capital and the potential and the capability that's brilliant talent within the university space, but just make them more aware of industry need at an earlier point in their careers. So we set up the innovation programme, and we deliberately created a mix of participants from industry, along with PhD participants and MSc participants. And that's proved really, really useful. And one of the great things that I think we've seen come out of that is that the PhD students have a huge hinterland of academic knowledge and specialist knowledge that the industry simply don't have. So industry might think, I've got a unique problem, and they talk to the PhD student who says, well, there's all this research all around the world that's come at this issue from a different angle. So I think PhD students can gain enhanced confidence in the depth of knowledge that they've got, but the industry people are coming with the pressures that industry works under, which is deliver results in a timely fashion and bring me solutions, not problems. And I think those issues that industry is facing can be expedited and sorted by involving academic expertise. So obviously a PhD programme, you've got 3-4 years of intensive and deep study, where the big test is at the very end. That's in complete contrast to the lifestyle and the working experience of people in industry who have to solve problems on a day and daily basis, minute by minute. But I think learning how those two different timeframes mesh together can be quite helpful. So the programme has strengthened ties between people working in industry and people studying in academia by bringing them together in an experiential learning setting. And what that's done is it's built up trust, knowledge and understanding of each community of the other. And fundamentally, it's creating a network and a cohort of leaders for the future. So if I give you an example, when I was a new graduate, I did some outward bound training with some peers, and 30 years later we all now are networked, even though we're working all around the world, and at any point we can pick up the phone and talk to each other because we've got that collective memory of having had that formative learning experience. And I think that's what we're trying to do for the aquaculture industry, and we're also trying to help academic students get excited about how they can apply their knowledge to real world problems. So what we've learned in developing and designing and delivering this programme is it's great to have a specific problem brought to you. So industry brought us a problem and they said academics are not quite as commercially savvy as we'd like them to be. So we had a specific problem to solve. We were creative in the way that we came about it. We also recognised that to make something new happen, you kind of need an agent of change or a stimulus, and that's exactly what the Innovation Centre was set up to do. So we've been the fulcrum and the mechanism for bringing these two different groups of people together and creating a brand new programme. So the advice that I would give to anyone who wants to organise anything similar is, first of all, be bold in your vision. think big, don't think small. See if you can find a delivery partner to collaborate with who shares your passion and your professionalism. And we certainly found that in Skillfluence, that they took our concept and they worked with us and allowed us to shape and develop what that concept was. And then as we've delivered it in several iterations, they've refined it and made it better and better each time. And how do we know that? Because we've asked industry, have they got value from it? And we've asked the PhD students, have they got value from it? And in each case, the answer is yes. And in each case, people have been prepared to come back and invest time and money again in running the programme on further iterations. The benefits to PhD students of going through this kind of experiential learning with people who are very different to them is it allows them to see how their knowledge is complementary to practitioner knowledge in industry. And it also helps them to understand the different perspectives and pressures that other people work under. Because I think academia is a very unique setting in which to operate. And there are all sorts of pressures there, but they're rather different to the pressures that people face in companies. And one of the key things that's different is the speed of reaction time that is expected in a commercial environment. And I think it's helpful for students to realise that time frames and deadlines operate in a kind of different realm in a commercial context to an academic context.
Okay, thank you very much there to Heather, and apologies, that's totally my fault, it kept on stopping, I kept on fidgeting with it, my apologies. So cooperative programmes, they give researchers the opportunity to work side by side with industry, being immersed in the world of industry to help solve real industry problems and challenges. And opportunities as well. So it's great for engaging with both academics and industry, building strong connections and creating genuinely useful solutions. And I can see that Zach's answering some questions there on the web chat. So I'm going to take us now into the third methodology, which is a blended approach. And we did get a question earlier about, are we going to look at anything that's not just focused on PhD students? So we are the fourth methodology is wider ranging than just PhD students. And a lot of these can be applied beyond PhD students, just maybe by taking a slightly different approach. But let's move now to the blended model, where we combine online learning, live workshops and application activities over a period of usually 4 to 6 weeks. We usually start with a 1 or 2 hour in-person meetup with the group. That's followed by online webinar-based modules each week with associated assignments for researchers to be able to apply to their own areas of research interest or business sector. The programme then culminates in a 1-day in-person workshop that includes a panel of speakers from industry, and it adds up over the whole time about 20 to 24 hours of time for participants. And we designed a blended programme for King's College London, the Health Sciences Doctoral Training Centre. They provide training, development and career support for the 1,700 doctoral research students in the 4 health faculties at King's. And it's irrespective of funding stream. So the King's programme is called Connecting with Industry, and the most recent programme had 35 participants and finished in March this year, and we'll be running it again January to March this year as well. So let me introduce you to Zach Sorrells. He's the Skillfluence Head of Innovation and Industry Engagement at Skillfluence. He's got 20 years experience, there he is. He's the one that's been answering your questions. You can see him now. 20 years training experience, and he's an expert in innovation systems. He's also worked with a really wide range of businesses, corporates, industry from Fortune 500 to startup entrepreneurs. And he worked with King's to design and deliver the pilot project, pulling together a diverse range of business-focused elements. So again, if you've got any questions, please type them away. If we don't get a chance to answer them this time round, we can get back to you and tell you a little bit more.
Hi, Alison. Hi, everybody. Just before, I know Alison's just super humble, but I just want to say congratulations, Alison, last night on winning the Scottish Edge Award. I know she wouldn't mention it, but it's a big deal. So well done. You deserve it. Lots of exciting things to come. Just my little opportunity to big you up a bit. So.
Thank you, Zach. I was there, fishing forward. Okay, thanks very much, Zach. So give everyone some context. Could you talk about how the blended program actually came about?
Yeah, so basically, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, but fundamentally we were running some workshops with King's College London, and they weren't very well attended. It's not something you kind of want to be proudly publicizing, but we kind of just, it didn't seem to be hitting the mark. And for the time invested and the money invested for everybody, it just wasn't doing what it needed to do. So kind of like you'd organize an event, workshop, and maybe get kind of 12 people, you get 20 some people to sign up, and 12 people would show up, and some would leave at lunchtime and all these types of things. And it just wasn't really working very well. And so we kind of sat down with the organizers and said, we really need to do something a little bit different, because these are important skills, but something's not right. Why isn't this hitting the mark? And so we kind of had we sat down with the organizers and came up with kind of 3 hypotheses. One was, what if we made it something that was easier to attend? Maybe the timing isn't right. If we could make it more accessible, if you will. What if we made it more immediately applicable? So it's not like an extra thing. It's something that they're working on specifically. And, what if a crazy idea, like what if we made it more exciting and interesting? Something that I really want to attend. And so we kind of took that and put together what is now this blended approach.
And I remember during the planning process, you had a few concerns or questions about how it would actually work. So can you talk us through how that did work?
Yeah, we'd never run anything like this before, and I'd never run anything like this before. So I was a few areas of concern. Specifically, I was concerned about the attendance. So I just didn't know how many people would sign up for this new thing. So I thought we maybe get 20 or so. But as kind of you were saying, we got a fair bit more than that. I was also really concerned, or a big question mark was around the engagement level. So how many, it was run over 5 weeks, and we had multiple kind of webinars and online activities to do. And there wasn't a whole lot to kind of keep people to the end, if you will, in terms of, it definitely wasn't a stick mentality. It was more of a carrot mentality. And I wasn't sure whether people would stay engaged throughout, a 5-week program. And kind of the third bit was just around the retention and actually doing some of the assignments. So there were activities that they needed to do, were supposed to do as part of the course. Would people do it? And again, there wasn't a requirement that they had to do it, but would they actively, proactively, complete, an hour homework assignment, if you will, as part of the program.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. And I can see in the chat that some folk are saying, yeah, they're used to maybe 50% is normal if you get that to attend. So what actually happened then?
So I was real, again, I was skeptical or unsure, and I was really blown away with it. To be honest, we ended up having, I think it was like 35 people came to the first workshop, which was nearly, at least just about double that had ever signed up to other one of our programs. So that was really good. That was a good start. The engagement level. So for the webinars that we had, about 70% of the 35 showed up for the live webinars, and that was once a week webinars. So we ran 4 webinars and averaged about 70% attendance for those webinars, which I thought was pretty good. But was exciting around the 30% that didn't attend because we were recording all of the webinars. All but maybe 2 or 3 people actually watched the recordings at a later time. So that was pretty positive. And in terms of retention, I think it was about 80% completion rate of the assignments. And we ended up having, of the 35 people that showed up to the first workshop, I think it was 31 or 32 came to the last workshop. So, a drop off of 3 people over a 5-week period. That was, it was encouraging that something seemed to work there where just the natural drop off of things of life, you're going to lose people. And we only ended up losing about, 3 or 4 participants over a 5-week period, which I thought was, was a reasonable result.
Oh, reasonable result. We were all extremely chuffed. Okay, great. Last question for you. Why do you think you had these types of results? What were the kind of takeaways that people can take from this and get some insight from?
Yeah, I think there were a few things. One is promotion. We made a pretty cool, working with Kings, we put together a kind of a slightly shinier video around the course and talked about it as something new and different and first time we'd run it. And so we talked about it. It was an exciting new program, and we talked about it like it's an exciting new program. And we also, which I think is important, is we had Kings wanted to put an application process around it. And so it was kind of wide open, but we made it a little bit more of a process to get involved. So you had to go through an application process. We let everybody in, right? So it wasn't like nobody didn't get in, but there's an application process. And this helped to, and we communicated that there were limited spaces, and this helped to increase the perceived value of this, I think. Another part was very much applied to their situation. So everything we did online was, we teach a principle and then say, this is what you can do to apply it to your area of research and area of study. So it wasn't extra. It was helping to move their current area of work forward. Another thing which we tried, which I thought which helped a lot, we gave personalized feedback. So when their assignments they submitted, I actually gave, read the assignments, didn't take a lot of time to do it, and gave, a couple paragraphs of personalized feedback on how they, what was good, where they could work on it. And that really helped to build relationship. And I think it also helped to increase the retention. Their work wasn't going into a black hole. Yeah. And also the importance of the live workshops. I think online has some really fantastic opportunities and potential, but having that live workshop at the front and live workshop at the end helped to build a cohort effect, and I think helped to build some buy-in.
Yeah, great. We've just had a quick question for you. So from Haley, where are all the attendees working in the same research area? She's just wondering about the application to their area of research.
So it was all health sciences, but they were all kind of working on quite different specific areas.
Yeah, it was all the themes, I think, across all the health sciences. So it was pretty wide ranging. Yeah, okay.
I mean, there was people working on devices and data analysis and pharmaceuticals. I mean, it was the full range of stuff.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Zach. If there's any other questions, please keep adding them, and Zach can either get back to you directly on the chat box. But thank you very much for that.
Okay, see you guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, so blended programs. These are really effective at exposing a large group to key industry-centric concepts, helping them to apply it to their area of study or interest that can be much more individualized. It's really great for providing a flexible, time-efficient way of supporting researchers to explore their own interests in relation to understanding industry. And you can really have larger numbers of people take part in that. So now let's move on to our fourth and final methodology, which is quite wide-ranging. So this is about capacity building, and this is about supporting the skills and knowledge of the researcher development and wider team through designing programs and delivering train-the-trainer type events and opportunities. We also have examples where we've co-delivered industry-focused workshops with researcher developers and managers to build their knowledge and confidence of business skills. So developing the skills of the team can often offer more clarity about the types of industry-focused programs. It can get more buy-in, and it can also be about building community and sharing resources by opening up to partners. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about one of those. We designed a capacity building program for the research-intensive University of Dundee. They've got more than 17,000 students, more than 3,000 staff, and we designed a program called Business Skills for Researchers. Dr. Sandra at the University of Dundee commissioned a number of interlinked business-focused projects this summer. This included 2 individual one-day business skills for researchers workshops, a one-day train the trainer workshop, and that was to develop capacity and confidence for university professionals that were involved in research or development. And she also, in addition to that, commissioned an audit to map the current industry engagement practices and activity within the university for knowledge exchange and training. So that was really interesting. And the aim was to identify gaps, best practice, and opportunities for development and inform future industry engagement activities. So Sandra has, there you go, Sandra has worked in researcher development since 2009, when she made the successful transition from senior postdoc associate to managerial role. She oversees the researcher development program. She's involved in management, leadership, mentoring, and all sorts of organisational development activities with staff and research postgrads at the University of Dundee. She's also got, there she is, she's also got fantastic strategic insight into the training elements of the research concordats. She works extensively with colleagues across the university in new provision. And you'll hear more now about the collaborative capacity building approach that she recently brought to developing the researcher developers. So if you've got any questions, again, please pop them in the chat box. And if we don't get a chance this time round, we'll be able to ask later. So welcome, Sandra. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Alison.
So there's two areas that you're working on that I think would be really interesting for the audience. One's the industry-centric programme for researchers that really hit the mark, and the other's the audit project that you're working on. So could you firstly tell us a bit more about how you got started working in the area of doing industry-centric training and programming for researchers?
Yes, certainly. So, from the introduction, I'm very firmly a research developer, kind of focused within our HR and OD function at the University of Dundee. But earlier this year, a colleague from our Research and Innovation Services got in touch with me to discuss the Scottish-wide University Innovation Fund initiative, which at that point I was not familiar with. Basically because I would be the most appropriate representative from the university to kind of attend an upcoming meeting that was happening in May. And that particular meeting had a focus on training for enhancing researcher skills for business. Although not an expert in that area, I had existing experience of training around IP, commercialisation, enterprise, and larger events such as Scottish Crucible. And again, very much around organising those events, I should stress, not facilitating them. I was really keen to attend the meeting to learn more, basically, and also to see what from my perspective, what I might be able to contribute, while also getting a sense of how it linked to my existing involvement with the kind of research concordats and that kind of wider research activity around REF. So the first meeting was held in May in Dundee. It was held there, so very easy to get to for me. And it was really useful to start building a kind of new network of colleagues from across the sector in Scotland, with a kind of focus on increasing the skill sets that researchers needed in this particular area, and also what ideas we could come up with and how to kind of share that best practice and resources where possible. Because I think on that day there was a sense in the room that as independent organisations, we might struggle to get kind of sufficient numbers to kind of engage in workshops, etc. But by collaborating, we might be able to offer a much wider range of opportunities to our researchers across that kind of whole audience across Scotland.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the first things that you decided to do was put on a series of workshops, and my understanding is they were really well attended. And I think one of the big parts of the challenge is getting participants to invest time in this type of training, and it's already come through from some of the questions and points that have come up. I think our audience would be really interested in learning more about how you did it and how could you talk us through the process of that?
Yes, certainly. So as you mentioned, when we met, we kind of had a discussion around kind of what the requirements that I had, and kind of giving the kind of audience that I'm kind of quite familiar with within our own university. But really what we wanted to do was do something that we could offer across Scotland, and in fact colleagues in Northern Ireland, if they were prepared to travel, that really focused around developing and strengthening the kind of softer skills around business skills for researchers, with two distinct audience in the first instance. And we would offer this free of charge for anyone that had an interest to come and attend at Dundee. So the first one, it was a kind of train the trainer like event for kind of researcher developers, educators, and also professional staff who may interact with researchers on a one-to-one basis. So really just a kind of more a train the trainer like event rather than a classic train the trainer, because many people coming would already have kind of set of skills around delivery. We also offered then the complementary workshop for research staff as well. So what we really wanted to do then was use the kind of make the best of existing networks that we had, and this was done primarily through a group of practitioners like myself across Scotland called ScotHerd, and also University of Scotland has a committee called the Researcher Development and Training Committee, which again is a well-established network, and also using this newly established University Innovation Fund network to kind of initially gauge the appetite for this sort of thing, and then obviously ultimately to help cross-promote the workshops across the sector. So the results were incredibly encouraging, in the sense that for the Train the Trainer event, we had 15 trainers come for a day's workshop across 7 Scottish universities, and for the research staff workshop, we had 19 research staff come along, and that was from 4 Scottish universities. And I think some of the kind of issues at the time were around a very short turnaround. So I think, again, had we a longer turnaround, I think we'd have got a much more, a larger engagement there. So delegates on the day were incredibly engaged with the kind of content of the workshops, and the feedback, again, was incredibly positive. We had great attendance. Everyone that signed up pretty much attended. And one unexpected output from this particular activity was the number of requests we received from our PGR population to attend. And I was actually able to use the evaluation reports from the 2 workshops that I had run to kind of gain additional funding for an additional modified version of the workshop to run later on in the year. Again, that was offered across the sector, and really we got an unprecedented level of interest, such that actually the University of Glasgow then organised a further business skills for researcher workshop, and then in the kind of collaborative spirit kind of offered that to people on the waiting list across the universities as well. So that was quite good, to kind of a good outcome that was unforeseen.
That's great. So, I mean, like, can we package this up? How did you do it? Why do you think it worked so well? And what's your advice or tips that you would give to others?
I think, kind of having kind of gone back, because obviously none of us have a crystal ball. When we do these things, we just kind of hope it works, do the old, gauge it and see if it works. But I think timing was a key factor. And obviously there was a pot of money that I was able to access and write a business plan for, and was successful in getting that. That was very helpful as well. I think the kind of way they were organised and delivered was kind of out with the typical scheduling of this sort of training. So they kind of were running June time. So I think maybe there wasn't too many other clashes in the diary, and kind of allowed people to kind of opt into this sort of opportunity. We also shortened the training day, so that I think it was 10:30 start and a 4 o'clock finish, so that allowed people to kind of travel comfortably and get to Dundee in a kind of reasonable time. We did change the kind of title. We played a bit with what would be a good title, and I think coming up with the business skills for researchers was kind of open enough and broad enough hook that it would meet many needs of the people considering going on this training, rather than us restricting it to a kind of industry-based focus, and allow individuals decide how they could best use the information to suit their own career trajectory. So that seemed to have worked. I think obviously things like limited availability, limited places in a short space of time is a kind of encouraging hook as well. I was very fortunate to talk to a couple of colleagues to kind of get initial sense of if this would work. And again, back to that, offering a collaborative offering worked particularly well as well. I think with respect to the Train the Trainer like event, again, I think it probably the way we pitched it, it met many of the diverse needs of the people in attendance, because again, there weren't just one sub category of staff. And I think offering to kind of increase their confidence and competence when engaging with business, but also supporting the researchers and highlighting some of the relevant tools was very useful. And I think I was actually at that particular one, and many people kind of commented that it was just really great to meet their counterparts at other universities, share best practice, and then again, how they chose to apply that information, be that in a one-to-one discussion, be that to incorporate it, you know, within their existing training or a new training provision, was kind of very much up to them how they took that forward. But really, again, from our point of view and kind of looking forward, it was to really provide that kind of in-house sustainability, and then hopefully potentially have further collaborative opportunities to maybe run this training kind of in multiple locations throughout the year.
Yeah, brilliant. Final question for you. I know that one of the key projects that you've been involved in has been the audit, and I know it's still a bit of a work in progress, but could you tell us a bit more about why you decided to do an audit, and you know, how you intend to actually use the results from that moving forward?
Yeah, certainly. So for me, again, with my background in research development, my knowledge of this whole sector is there, but limited. But for me, it was a means to pull together some of those touch points of engagement with industry that the university has at present. But then maybe at an organisational level, becoming much more informative and being able to kind of strategically see how we may make best use of that, or better use than we might currently do. I think, again, conducting the audit externally allowed for a level of objectivity in a format that for me personally could be used to kind of get senior level buy-in from a very early stage. The kind of key recommendations that will emerge from that survey, the audit, will hopefully kind of inform some of those decisions, kind of more at a committee level rather than, say, for example, just at my level, just kind of independently thinking this sounds like a good thing to do. So kind of get that committee level support, and then hopefully the kind of appropriate resourcing to make sure that we kind of meet that need. Hopefully as well, it might become a case study as part of our SFC outcome agreement. You know, there's a kind of good body of work there to show that we're kind of considering all options. But I think, again, that kind of organisational oversight to kind of guide our next steps on how to improve the support we offer researchers, and also how to collaborate more effectively at kind of both within our own institution, but obviously across a national level as well.
Okay. And did that work in with did it link in with the university's KEF agenda?
Pardon? Sorry, I'm having trouble.
Did the audit work to link in with the university's KEF agenda?
Yes, I mean, I'm not as involved in that, but I think ultimately, yes. So, I mean, I liaise with our colleagues in RIS, so invariably, yes, it will be, yes. Yeah,
that's great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sandra. I'm sorry we don't have more time to chat to everyone. I feel like I've squeezed everyone, but that's been really interesting. Thanks ever so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay. So capacity building is a great approach for when you want to build knowledge and confidence in industry-focused skills among the researcher-developer team. So thank you there to Sandra. So I'm just really going to wrap up. I know we're slightly over. We've tried to squeeze too much in. So just to give you an idea of the different kind of formats that can be combined and delivered. So all the different programs that we've shown there, they can all be done in different types of way, whether it's a webinar, multi-day programs, one-off programs, one-day programs, lots of different ways and formats in which they can be run. So you can contact me directly if you'd like to learn any more, or please completely exit survey where you'll have the chance to let us know what you're interested in. If there's anything that you want us to follow up with, then that's great. We can send you a link to the recording. There's also a copy of a poster that we exhibited at this year's VTI conference that we can send on to you. You can tick the box to say that you'd like that as well. We'd just really appreciate your feedback about this, the whole webinar. We want to know if it's useful. Is it a good way of bringing people together to share approaches? What could we do differently next time? If we do it, should we do it next time? And how could we do it differently? What recommendations would you make? Also, again, if you've got something that you think that you could contribute, perhaps you've experienced running a program, you'd be happy to share. We'd love to hear from you. Perhaps you could be involved at the next one. We really hope it's been worthwhile for you. We're delighted that so many people could join us. It's been fantastic. It's nice not talking to an empty screen. So thank you very much for joining us. Does anyone have any questions? Because I think this is probably the end of the webinar now, but I'm happy to hang around for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If people have any questions, I'm happy to take them. But please feel free to leave, fill in the evaluation form, and thank you again very much for joining us. And to all our wonderful guest speakers, really interesting to hear from them. I just wish I had longer. Thank you very much.